Municipal Planning, Zoning, and Agricultural Committee meeting together for Wednesday, December 20th. We get a roll call, please.
Mr. Featherling? Mr. Miller? Ms. Weber? Mr. Fairfield? Mr. Long? Mr. Swanson? Mr. Eckhoff? Ms. Foster? Ms. Andrade? Mr. Ashcraft? Mr. Scanlon? Ms. Turner? Mr. Wheeler? Mr. Alexander Hildebrand? We have a quorum.
I don't have any public comment listed here. All I see is Ben back there, so we'll go for approval of minutes for November 22nd. Everybody received them on their email. Anybody have any changes or deletions or additions to make to that? Barring none. Okay, Mr. Long? Okay. Mr. Swanson? All in favor say aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion that carries, I guess. Okay, we'll do these. Okay, Del, first up we have a building report. I got a motion to approve the building report. Mr. Eckhoff. Second by Mr. Fairfield. Okay, go ahead now.
You turn on. Oh, I guess it's already on. All right, in your packet you should have the building report for November 2023. We issued 67 permits in November, one of those for a new home, $456,000 home. Brought in revenue of $26,576, and the total valuation for those permits is $2.6 million. We're down a little bit from November 2022. We had 2 houses in 22 in November and had revenue of $30,000. So we're down a little bit, probably because of the second house.
Okay, anybody have any questions for it? I had a motion in a second, so get all in favor, say aye. Opposed, same sign. Okay. Oh, Mr. Wheeler, sorry. Sure.
As far as building permits go, where do you see them when they are building in an enterprise zone, before and after? Is that how that process works? I'm talking specifically of the Manteno, the old Kmart warehouse facility. That sale is in process right now, and we are going to see that sale here shortly. And I'm just curious on, like, when they start renovating, are there building permits that are fees are waived? How does that process work?
Well, that's in the village, so the building permit would be through the village for anything they do there. The only, Ben could probably talk about this better than I could for the enterprise zone, but when they will come to us for the sign off on their enterprise zone benefits. That would be our only involvement in that.
Okay.
Ben, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, so through the enterprise zone process, what we require is an application to the enterprise zone for the benefit. Part of that application is the attached building permit. So that's kind of our trigger. Once permits have been issued and it's been authorized by the jurisdiction, we then process that application. So we do see all of those construction projects come through our office, even if they're not in our jurisdiction.
So if they don't, when they're submitting for the permit, if they don't submit the application, then they don't get the enterprise zone benefit. Because they can't put the sticks up until they got.
So, well, the state currently manages on our benefit entitlement. So the way we issue building permits within our office is if you're in the enterprise zone, you receive the benefit. You don't have to say, hey, I'm in the enterprise zone. We actually reference our map to check that for our building permits. The local jurisdiction, if they didn't offer that benefit to them, say they're building in Manteno and they didn't know about that and Manteno charged them for a full permit, I suppose they conceivably could ask the village for a rebate in those instances, but they would be entitled to that benefit. If they start construction without asking for the enterprise zone, the way the Department of Revenue is managing that now, they can at that point still get a application, even if it's for like the last brick or stick. I mean, they could do 95% of the project. If they ask for it on that date, everything going forward, they could still get, but they cannot go backwards. So if you start and get halfway done, you can't backdate that stuff.
So with many other things, just like in all of this, it starts with where, and then it goes to, because it doesn't matter, enterprise zone is multi-jurisdictional. So it starts with where is it, and then that's who handles it.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else have any questions on that? Okay, we'll go on to the stormwater, Dell, MS4, talk about that again
As
today.
we do every month, we are required by our MS4 program to ask this committee if you have any stormwater issues within your districts that you'd like to bring forward.
We haven't had a lot of rain in any particular place in a while, so I don't have anything that I have. Anyone else have anything?
The MS4 program is part of the Clean Water Act, and as we administer our stormwater program, one of the things is public input, and we utilize this committee for that input.
Okay. Next up, we have Kankakee County Chapter 105 Buildings and Building Regulations Update. We have Steve Marion here. He's got some information for us. You want to take over here and
Just
take all your questions at the end? You want to do that? Let's do that.
You can ask questions during
Or you want to go during it? Okay.
about every 5 years, we update our building codes, and we're at that interval again, so I'll turn it over to Steve and let him talk about that.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Steve Marion.
I got you on there. Okay. So.
My name is Steve Marion. I'm the head building official for Kankakee County. I've been tasked with updating the current codes. Just going to give you a little brief procedural information here on how we go about and come to the point of adopting the new codes. As Dell said, we're required as part of the hazard mitigation plan that we just went through to be within 3 code cycles of current codes at all times. Otherwise, we get dinged on some of our ratings. The other reason for that is the ISO rating, which is for insurance purposes for the state, which kind of regulate and monitor risk factors within communities based on, one of the things is fire departments and the second is building departments. Assuming that if we're more than 3 code cycles back, then our codes are so outdated that there's new technology that we're not even acknowledging because of the fact that we aren't required to by code. So this is going to be kind of just a brief overview of what we do to get to that point. This is a list of the current codes that we're on, which are the 2015 ICC codes, International Residential Building Code, Mechanical, Fuel, Property Maintenance, Fire, and Electrical Code. And if you notice at the bottom, that's actually a 2014 National Electrical Code. We choose to use that in place of the ICC Electrical Code because it's a little bit more prescriptive and detailed than the IEC code, which is the ICC code for electric. It's more general and flexible, and the NEC focuses more on the end use rather than some of the technical aspects. So actually, the person before me was an electrician by job, so he decided that was better, and we've stuck with that. But it is more of a user-friendly code. So now we're going to the 2021 same list of codes, just updating the 2 code cycles. Also, we have additional codes that are state mandated, state managed, and adopted by the state, and those codes we automatically adopt as the state adopts them. So we don't have any authority to pick and choose or to kind of go through and add or subtract things from these codes, and I'll get to a little more detail on some of the issues with that later. But these are also codes that are listed in our 105 that are automatically adopted and changed as the state adopts them and adds to them. This is a list of some of the changes that we had noticed that were significant. Now, just to give an example, this is the list of significant changes in just the IBC book, which is like one of 6 books we have. So there's a lot of changes. A lot of those are technical changes, some clarification changes, some verbiage changes, things like that. So we picked out ones that are a little more significant that we're going to see more on a daily basis as we do our jobs going out in the field. So the first one on the list identifies the intermodal shipping containers as a building material. That's become more prevalent, in the recent past where people are asking to use them, not only for some storage facilities, but there are actually people that are using them or wanting to use them for building material. As it sits, to use that as a residence, while they're sturdy, there's a lot of other aspects that are required to make it safe for residential use. So there's a lot of things that they have to be upgraded on. And up until now, there really hasn't been any reference to that in the code. So in the 21 code, they have put that in there to give us some guidelines to deal with that. But basically, if you look at my terminology, it's that we use shipping containers as a building material, which is different than using shipping containers as a building. So we still, while we look at that, it's just another material that they use to create a house or a storage facility. They still have to adhere to all the other codes that are going to be required depending on what that use may be. One of the main things that they acknowledge or that they reference in the new code is that there is a data plate that are supposed to be on all of these shipping containers. That gives us information on when it was created or built, structural safety test, and the last time that had been done, some structural data. So if that plate isn't on there, then it's not allowed to be used for basically anything that's going to be inhabitable at all. And storage is still considered inhabitable. Andy?
Mr. Wheeler.
While I don't need the specific, what's the difference between a mobile home and a container then? An axle?
Well, first of all, mobile homes are automatically regulated by the Illinois Department of Health. So they have, while it's a different level of building standard, it is still regulated for residential use. These shipping containers are constructed solely to ship items across the country, across the sea, so on and so forth. Mm-hmm. So there's no acknowledgement on a shipping container of any use as being occupied in any facet, whether it be fully as a residential house or even minimally as a storage. Whereas as mobile homes, there is regulations that are taken care of to make sure that it does have safety factors, smoke detectors, proper egress, things like that. So that's what makes, the major difference between the two.
That answer your question, Andy, or?
Not real. Just in the rural areas, because we have a propensity of people wanting to drop mobile homes on small parcels in the rural areas. And what's the difference between that and having some building materials put on cinder blocks instead of, you see where I'm going? It's it's another mobile home. It's just not as mobile.
Well, I guess the difference here is just the mere fact that we're responsible for making sure that all buildings are up to ICC regulated residential standards, with the exception of mobile homes, because of the fact that they're regulated by the Illinois Department of Public Health.
Right. So,
all we look for in a mobile home, first of all, we don't regulate mobile home parks anyway.
Right.
But I say that we don't regulate the mobile homes in mobile home parks. Any accessory structures, whether it be outbuildings, decks, fences, if they have any of that, we do still permit and regulate. The only thing we look for in a mobile home is that it has a seal, usually that's in the interior of the electrical panel, that shows that it's been approved by the Illinois Department of Public Health. So because they have already pre-managed that to make sure that it's meet the residential standards, then we don't look at that. A shipping container has not had any of that, so it's our responsibility to make sure that it's done that way.
Okay.
Yeah, really, there's two different paths. Mobile homes, it's Department of Public Health at the state level, HUD at the federal level that sets the regulations for those. Those are built in a factory, they're inspected, they're stamped. When they come to the site, we know that they're ready to go. Mm-hmm. So we're only really inspecting for the site hookups and the utilities and such.
I'm sorry to belabor the point. I just
okay.
don't want to be stuck in the middle of a field discussing semantics on this is a mobile home and this is a container, and then deciding, well, today it's a mobile home, it's not a container. You see where I'm going with this? You can't regulate it. I just want your assurances that that is covered in the code.
Well, that's why it's a building material and not a building. So it will follow the path of a stick-built building like any other home would, and those codes would be required.
Gotcha.
So you can use parts of the container, you can use the whole container, but you'll have to have architectural stamps and engineering stamps and things like that to show that it does meet the codes. Okay?
Fine.
And it would have to be permanently affixed to a foundation, unlike a mobile home. Okay, so there is some dramatic differences between the two.
And the IRC code has a higher level of code requirements than the mobile homes require. So actually, a container, once it's been approved and done with the ICC codes, will actually be for lack of better terms, probably a little safer, at least a higher level of requirements than what the IDPH does. So,
Fair enough. Hope you understand my concern.
yeah, absolutely. All right, some of the other listed issues, the maximum wind speed has been reduced from 115 mile an hour to 107 mile an hour, which you very rarely ever see codes back off a little bit. But the only reason they did that is they've changed the areas, the zoning areas. So actually, we were in a large zoning area in which the northern part of it was the 115, and then we went further south and went down. They just changed that, so we went into a lower range there. So that's the reason that has went down. The third one here is the first one that we are choosing to alter. And this is basically stating the repair, alteration, or replacement of a fuel-fired mechanical system is required the carbon monoxide alarm to meet the construction standards of today's standards. There's always been in the code some descriptions on at what point during some sort of a renovation that we are required to bring the rest of the house up to today's code standards. And the replacement of fuel-fired systems was deleted from that in the past. They have taken this one off. So basically, to sum it up, someone is going to come in and want to put a new water heater in because their water heater went out, which is probably about a $700 or $800 repair or install. And with this new portion, they're going to now have to bring their whole house up to today's standards with requirements of carbon monoxide, smoke detection, so on and so forth. So, and they all have to be hardwired. So it's going to involve a lot of fishing of wires. If you've got a 2-story house, it's more than even going in the attic because you might have to get between floors and so on and so forth. So we just felt that this was going to a little bit of an extreme where it was going to actually make an $800 water heater repair a $3,000 or $4,000 or $5,000 repair, which is too much of a hardship for a lot of people. So that's one of the ones that we decided to eliminate, and we just eliminated that one line that basically requires, even for something as minor as the installation of technically, if you read it, it even says repair. So in theory, they could be putting a new burner plate in an existing hot water heater, and if they come and got a permit, which I guess my other concern is this would probably start making people feel like, let's just try and do this without a permit because of the fact it's going to cost so much. So it would actually, I think, promote people not coming in to get a permit for something they otherwise would. So that's one of the reasons, a couple of the reasons that we decided to eliminate that. Yes, sure.
Response to it?
Permit to have a new water heater put in there?
Yes, you do. Yep, that is correct.
Know that.
Yeah. Now, with that being said, we're not out there beating down the county looking for someone who's installed a water heater without a permit, honestly. But if anybody comes in and asks, and most of the local home appliance, most of the companies that do a lot of those, Good Burlette, they come in and get permits for all of them. And we're issuing 2 or 3 permits a week for each of those guys as they go out and do their work for furnaces. And keeping in mind, obviously, this is kind of more of a ventilation issue. If it wasn't vented properly, there's potential carbon monoxide issues, things like that, gas leaks. So there is a safety hazard to the public, and that's the reason that we issue the permit or require the permit for that. Another one, vapor barriers under slab-on grades for basements and attached garages. The thickness of the vapor barrier is increased from 6 mil to 10 mil. Not a major issue, not a significant life safety issue, but it is something that the builders will have to make an adjustment to. Next one is on decks, a 4x4 wood attached post that is attached to the rim, and I don't know how many of you notice things like this, but usually they notch 1.5 inches of that post out so that it kind of is flush with the outside of the deck. That's not going to be allowed anymore on 4x4, because in essence now you have a 4x4 that really becomes a 2x4, and it isn't in some cases strong enough to be able to withstand the 200 pounds of pressure that is needed to be supported by a rail. Keeping in mind that any deck under 30 inches doesn't even require a rail. So, but obviously you get over that level, then the rails become pretty important, and then so they just it decided that was now actually that 2-inch does meet that standard of the 200 pounds when it's new, but as it deteriorates, all of a sudden 5 years from now, it might not meet that 200 pounds. So by using the full 4x4, you're increasing the life expectancy of that rail, basically, that's going to withstand that required 200 pound pressure for a much longer period of time. GFCIs, this is in the electrical code now, are hardwired disconnects for the AC. Up until this point, if I don't know if anybody noticed, but on the outside where you have your air conditioner, there is a disconnect there automatically for air conditioners, as opposed to having a one back at the electrical panel. Because of that, they were not requiring those to be GFCI'd because they had their own disconnect. But there's still an electrical hazard there, so they've decided to protect that with GFCI, even though it has that direct disconnect at the unit itself. The next one is the only other one that we decided to change or to omit, and that's that they're requiring GFCIs for sump pumps. I think it's obvious that you don't want your your sump pump the breaker to trip when you're on vacation for a week or something, and especially if you have an issue where you could be prone to flooding without it. The concept is understandable in the sense that there is an outlet down there that your sump pump is plugged into. You could conceivably unplug that, plug something else in. Now there might be potential safety hazard. What we have done in the past to alleviate that, or at least minimize that, was that we require that outlet be A, on its own breaker, and B, that is what we call a single yoke outlet. In other words, there's only one spot to plug in. It isn't like you plug one in and there's an open outlet next to it. So we decided that that is a sufficient enough weight of risk versus reward, basically. So we just thought that was potentially could cause a lot of property damage in the event that would mistakenly go off, or something would trip that while you're not home to monitor it. And then the last one is the outdoor readily accessible disconnects, and what that is previous code required that if your outside meter socket that you see that ComEd reads your meter off of was more than 10 feet away from your service panel in the house, then you had to have a disconnect to shut it off on the outside. They've changed that now to make it so that no matter what that distance is, even if it's just on the other side, they still want an outdoor accessible disconnect for the house. And basically this is to deal with the fact that whenever the fire department is called for something, no matter how minor it might be, the first thing they want to do is shut down the power to the house. And what they would do then is they would pull the meter because there was no disconnect. Well, ComEd requires that as soon as the meter's been pulled, then they have to have a permit and we have to go out and inspect it before the ComEd is going to turn that back on. This allows the fire department to do a quick shut off of that power without disruption that's going to have to have an electrician come to do some repair to turn it back on. So that's a list of the changes that we considered noteworthy, and that were and then you can see the two that we decided to eliminate.
Yeah, I had a quick question for you. January 1st, the governor put into effect, you're going to have to put a receptacle in a garage or anywhere you build anything or have a plug-in for a car.
Mm-hmm.
Is that included in this change, or
that's coming up?
Because that's federal? This is. I mean, that would be state.
Actually,
so
I have that on a slide coming forward.
Okay.
But that's one of those what I had mentioned before, that is a state regulated and state mandated code that automatically gets updated. So that's an example of the state has, as of January 1st, required that all new construction houses and substantial renovations are going to have an outlet to charge a car. Like a lot of these things that go through the state and get approved, they don't fully look at the aspects of it. And one of the concerns that we have with this, although really we can't do much about it, is the fact that most of these require at least 40 amp breakers to cover that. So a lot of these smaller houses that are being built, and mobile homes included, only have 100 amp service, 100 amp technology in the house. You're not going to be able to power the rest of that house on 60 amps. So first of all, this is probably going to eliminate you seeing any 100 amp services being put into any new construction. They're going to have to go with a minimum 200 just to be able to have that. Now, keep in mind that the governor's and the state mandated requirement is this, that you rough in. So you don't have to have the electrical wire or anything to that. You just have to have the conduit in the wall and the box there, so that in the event that you do get a electric car, that you're not having to invasively cut drywall out or something to get that ran through there. But you still then have to, as part of that, have to leave space in the panel to take that in the event that you would. So even though you're only going to be using 80 or 90 amps, maybe you're going to have to put what you would, that extra 40 amps is going to have to be calculated in there. So again, you're going to be going to 200 amp services minimum. That's going to cause a big problem again when we go back to if you do a rehab that maybe goes over the level of the threshold of what we're going to require to update to new codes. Therefore, now you might have to additionally upgrade your service from 100 amp to 200 amp to be able to absorb that. And it's also going to add, a fair amount of extra money. I mean, the rough-in itself isn't expensive, but to go from 100 amp to 200 amp, or a lot of the larger homes, we're kind of pushing the 200 amp threshold. Now there might have to go to 400 amp, and 400 amp is going to, obviously, now you're getting to a lot more expense there. You're increasing the size of wiring, and wiring isn't cheap. The panels are more expensive. So there's a lot of aspects there that are gonna be affected by this that I'm not sure if the legislature completely thought through before they enacted this. So I think like a lot of things that occur with this, I think you might see some additional information out there, some additional maybe exceptions to that going forward. At least we hope there will be, because now even mobile homes, which we don't have a lot of those in the county, but there are still places that mobile homes are allowed. They're probably going to have to increase their capacity, which they might have to have a manufactured that way from the factory. The other aspect is a lot of these mobile homes don't have garages. Still required to have it. So now you're going to have to put an outside self-contained terminal, which those are very expensive because they have to be weather resistant. So now normally you're adding more to a mobile home. A lot of the reason people are using mobile homes is because they're a little more efficient, a little more in their budget. So you're putting that a little bit out of reach for some people also by requiring that. So
just to add, it applies not just new houses, any new dwelling unit. So mobile home, an apartment, new house.
You build a 12 flat, you got to put 12 of them in.
Yes.
Well, fortunately, we don't have many areas in the county that are going to require that we allow that level of multifamily housing. But this is not just for us. So it will affect municipalities more than it will affect us.
Yeah. Okay, Mr. Eckhoff.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So what about if you're rehabbing a house, and usually if you do over 50% or if you start tearing out, does that consider that in the state law that's a new dwelling then?
Yep. Any substantial renovation that breaks that threshold, that threshold, keep in mind, is not going to be just for that. That now all codes apply to that. But that's just going to be another one that's going to be stacked on the list of requirements. So
yeah, like the smoke detectors now
right.
Hardwire, electrical, and all that.
I believe it's 60%.
60%.
60% to start over. Mr. Wheeler.
Is there anything in the law that requires the generation or delivery utilities to be able to feed enough power to these neighborhoods? that more than one or two cars will be able to charge?
I don't believe I read
Because it's
anything.
all ifs and buts and
Right.
rainbows and unicorns if you can't get power into the neighborhood to charge the vehicles.
Right, yeah, and there's nothing.
There's
in
no
the code that
transformers, there's no
references that.
infrastructure.
Right, there's nothing in the code that references that. That's another one of those, the code doesn't reference some of the problems I've been discussing too, and that very well could be another one. Sometimes, at peak performance during the summer, ComEd already has enough hard time trying to get enough electricity fed, so this is just gonna add to that. Now, keep in mind, at this point, in the short term, this is just rough in, so that demand is not gonna initially be there because a lot of these people still don't have it, but we're building to a point where once a certain percentage of those homes are now utilizing that as opposed to just having it in there as a future option, that absolutely could become an issue. And I'm assuming that ComEd has enough lobbying power that they'll have those discussions with them prior to that. But
We are expecting
no,
amendments to
It's
that
called the
code.
Citizens Utility Board will get a rate hike request.
Well,
So we
exactly.
get to pay for the infrastructure
Exactly.
and their
But
lobbyists.
if you notice, they just got turned down not too long ago with one of those requests. So it's not a rubber stamp, but yes.
Sometimes I
Unfortunately,
don't,
oh, I'm
I
sorry.
don't know what the legislature really is thinking about. When I read all that, I couldn't believe what I saw. All the different rules that are changed first.
Yeah, that is one of the codes that the county board does not have control over.
Well, I would just say if you're going from A to Z, you can't skip all the other letters in between.
Absolutely.
And we shouldn't have to pay for them all.
I agree.
Let the people get the electric cars paid for it.
All right. Any questions going forward here? All right. Go to the next. So now I'm going to give you a little bit of a brief explanation on our Board of Examiners, which is the body that we use to review and ultimately give a recommendation to you and eventually the county board for approval of what we're adopting along with the changes. So first, all the people on the board are appointed by the county board, including the chairman. The building division manager, myself, is the secretary of the board, and I'm the one that keeps track of all the paperwork and everything involved in it. The members are described in Chapter 105 as to have specific disciplines. So this isn't just 5 of my friends that I picked out of a lineup. All the people you see there, civil engineers, contractors, architects, electrical, plumbing, those are all specifically required in the ordinance. So this is the list of the members that we have chosen that does hit all 6 of those disciplines within the profession. Andy.
We appoint the chair and the vice chair?
There's no
vice chair.
There's no
Or
vice chair.
we appoint,
You appoint the
we
chair.
do, they don't choose.
Correct.
Now, in the event that the chairman is not able to make it, the board then can appoint a acting chair. I wouldn't call him a vice chair, I guess, but an acting chair for that specific meeting. But that's the limits as to what the board itself does as far as that appointment. All right, this is a list of the meetings that we had and what was done at the meetings. The first meeting we had was October 20th, where I had previously sent out to the board the list of significant changes to the code. We got together on October 20th and discussed that list, and that's where we had decided that of the 2 that we had decided to eliminate, that's where we come to that decision. One of the other requirements is that we have a public hearing before we formally recommend approval. So on the 28th of November, we did have a public hearing that was held, and then subsequent to that public hearing, once that public hearing was closed, we had our second meeting in which we had a little further discussion on the comfort level of the changes we were promoting. And then ultimately the board did vote 4-0 to recommend to approve Chapter 105 and with a couple amendments that we had implemented at the meeting before. So on the 28th of November, the Board of Examiners did ultimately 4-0 vote recommend approval at this level, and that's why we're here today. here's a timeline of our plan, assuming that you guys give a recommendation today. You can see the first one was in November. We had the meeting, the ultimate recommendation. Today we're sitting here in December at the PZA, asking for your approval of recommendation. Assuming that occurs, it will go to the full county board, I think January 9th, I think. Assuming that the recommendation is taken and adoption is approved, then we'll have a grace period of the rest of that month, February and March, that will promote the changes. You can see we'll do some signage, website. As people come in, special contractors will make sure that they're aware of these implementation. We'll hand out literature to them as they come in, and then we will actually start implementing the new code as of April 1st. When we did this last time, it was in 2017 for the 2015 code. I was relatively new at that point, but my experience then was we are still within reason, going to give them a little more time to come to implementation. We're not going to go out there and make somebody pull out 3,000 square feet of 6 mil plastic to put in the 10 mil that is required if they had some of that left and they weren't aware of it. So we will continue to work with them in hopes that we get enough education out there that by summer we'll be in full implementation, and we won't give people a second chance. If we go out there first time, it's the first time we've talked to them and they've missed something, do it next time. Second time we go out there for them, then we'll be a little bit more harsh or stringent on our implementation. Any questions?
Is this something that you would use the permitting tool to blast out a notification to your list of people that we have new building codes?
Right.
Yeah. And I guess maybe at some point you could tell us how many people have signed up for that. It may be a meeting, just because it's been about a year. We've been kind of getting ramping and going. It seems like that'd be a good use of that system.
We can get those numbers for you, but yeah, that is one of the
just the ways to do it.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to probably put something on the county's Facebook page. We're going to put signage up in our office. We can utilize direct. That's basically a direct email program there. Yeah. So yes, we're going to utilize all that in February and March to try to get as many people to know that there is a change as we can.
Okay.
That was my question also
Ms. Foster?
about how you were going to get the information out. But also, can you go back to the page where all the members are? I'm going to take a picture of that.
We can send out this presentation to all of them.
I didn't need the whole presentation. I just kind of wanted to see who. I wanted to take a picture of that.
Go ahead, Andy.
The timing. Is there a time of the year? Because one of the reason I'm asking is because of the benefit to the citizens, all citizens, on the rates on their homeowners insurance. Mm-hmm. So we update to the new codes, and then they can calculate with a new multiplier, whatever that is. A new risk factor, maybe, is the best way to put it. Is there a time of the year when those are calculated, or is it just everybody's different based on renewal?
Renewal of the policy usually.
So they can start using that maybe within 6 months, and then people may see an impact on their
Well, keep in mind that they're probably not going to see an impact. They would see an impact if we didn't do it. The rates are already calculated because at this point we're doing this proactively. We're not 3 code cycles behind. We're only 2. So we already are getting that benefit. So you're not going to see a rate decrease by us doing this. Yeah. But if we didn't do it, you could foreseeably see a rate increase because our ISO rating would go down once we hit that threshold of being back three code cycles.
It's really a matter of keeping the benefit.
Right.
Keeping. And in 17, we were behind. Was that correct? It seemed like we were 2 behind.
In 2017, I think we were working off the 2006 codes. Yes. We were more than.
There was an impact.
Yeah.
But barely.
Now it's not.
Yeah, because we went from 6, so it would have been 9, 12, and 15. So we're 3 code cycles were there until 2015. So they'll give us a little bit of a break if we're in the process of working in that adoption. And we started this even though we had this meeting in October. I started working on this to review things a year ago. Just because you can see here, these are 3 of like 6 books that we have to kind of go through to kind of look at some of those changes. So it's a little time consuming. and it's not like that's my full-time job. There's other factors I have to deal with every day. So, so I guess they'll give you a little leeway if you show that you're in the process of you know, implementing that. But like anything else, as you guys have probably seen with the hazard mitigation in the past, it was kind of a rubber stamp to get our hazard mitigation, you know, updated. And this time, all of a sudden, they didn't approve our initial request, and we had to hire someone and go. So, like everything else, things become more technical. And more is required, so I think that they're hitting that a little heavier now than they maybe did back in 2017 also. Okay. Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions right now? Okay, we're good to go, I guess.
All right, so now John stole my thunder a little bit. This
Sorry.
was, or at least part of it.
It was
but
in
this,
my head, I read it.
This
a
is
couple
some of the
days
new
ago.
legislation that has come about recently from a state level that again, we don't really have any say-so over, that we're another one of those state mandated things that they don't fund us for, but we're required to manage and keep track of. So one of them is, as we adopt these new codes, we need to report those to the specific entity there. The other big one that we're, you know, really going to struggle with a little bit, at least in the initial thing here, is the Illinois Energy Conservation Code, which is now the biggest change here is the R value in residential walls. Up until now, the R value was you could make a 2x6 wall work with nothing else. And now, regardless of what the thickness of a wall is, you have to have an R5 continuous on the outside of that wall. Just to give you a little explanation there, we put insulation between studs on a wall. The stud itself, even on its 2x6 thickness, does not give as much R value as the insulation. So I don't know if you've ever noticed, like on a roof or even some walls, and you go by when it's cold out, you can see like condensation. You can see where the studs are. That's because there's more heat being lost on those studs. So now you're going to have to put at least and a half-inch of continuous styrofoam on the outside of that wall. I don't care if you use a 2x12 wall. You still got to have this continuous R5. So my formula there, if you look in the thing, it says an R20 cavity plus R5 continuous, or an R13 cavity plus R10. The R13 is referencing or 2x4 wall. So if you're going to build with a 2x4 wall, you're now going to have to put an R10, which is an inch of foam on the outside. So first of all,
1 inch or 2 inch? I thought it was 2 inch. Or is it 1 inch?
I think it's 1 inch.
I don't think you can hang 2 inches on a wall.
Oh, yeah.
It's 1 inch.
It's nails.
At any rate, the issue here being A, it's expensive. B, it's another labor aspect of installation. And one of the other factors is right now we put plywood on the outside of the walls, and that gives a lot of stability, and it gives us the wind resistance that we're needed. And we're going to have to still be able to do that. So in actuality, we're putting this inch on. We still have to have that half-inch of plywood, or you have to put bracing within the cavities of the walls. And then it also affects window and door jams. So all the window companies that are building windows now are going to have to make adjustments to the fact that these walls are going to be thicker. So the standard jam that they've been creating to adjust for that is going to have to change. So there's going to be a lot of factors here that are going to have to. There's going to be adjustments made, and this goes into effect January 1st of this year. So we don't have exactly all the answers as to how we're going to come to that. We already have problems with windows being back ordered because of the fact that there's a supply demand issue. And now if all of a sudden these windows are going to have specialty jams, or the companies are making adjustments to make a thicker jam, it's even going to put that potential wait list on the windows longer than what it is now. So we can't decide not to do this. Like I say, it's state mandated. However, they do give us some latitude on our period of adjustment, given the fact that there's going to be some supply issues that are going to have to change. So, and then John had mentioned the electrical vehicle ports, which is the other requirement that you know, it's gonna be a significant change that we have no say-so in. So, I think that's all I got.
So, I used to do a lot of estimating, a lot of stuff like that. How much you think they added to the cost of a 2,600 square foot house?
I don't have the exact number, but I can tell you that a 1-inch piece of foam is, I wanna say is like $25 or $30 a sheet, 4x8 sheet. So it's about 2/3 of the cost of the 1/2-inch plywood, which is, you know, when I was in business, I paid $8 for a sheet of 1/2-inch plywood. Now
CDX,
it's
yeah.
like $45 or something like that.
And
So that's
kind of
already
dating
increased
yourself.
immensely. And now you're still gonna have to have that or some sort of wind bracing to meet code. And now you're gonna be adding that continuous styrofoam insulation on the outside, which is, you know, again, another trip around the house to install it, plus the extra cost. And I don't know is that it isn't potentially gonna cause an issue with supply of that
Siding,
also,
yeah.
because of the fact that
Can't get it.
it's gonna, you know, it's gonna be in demand for, because we're already now required to put insulation on the outside of basement walls if you're not gonna
Right.
finish your inside, you know, so now this is gonna put a lot more demand on that styrofoam.
How about all of them together on a house?
All of them together?
Yeah. Talking $5,000 on a house maybe?
I would
At
say
least if
all
you
of
gotta,
that.
if you gotta upgrade the service to 200 amp.
Yeah, I would
that's
say
gonna
all of
cost-
$5,000 when you figure the labor involved and, you know, extra trips around the house, put the foam on and so on and so forth. Yeah, I would say it could,
Yeah, okay.
it could add.
I was just guessing at
substantial amount.
$5,000 when I was looking at it.
Yeah, I think it might.
He
be.
just all of a
think it'd be
sudden
more than
decides they're
that.
gonna add
Yeah, I think
5 grand
it'd
to
be
every
more than
house
that,
they're
probably.
gonna build.
Gotta
I
have
got another
affordable housing though.
question.
Okay.
How do you feel about foam being sprayed into a house for insulation?
Well, the interesting thing there is that the foam itself is a very, obviously one of the best insulations you can get. The catch being what I said before is you still can't do it over the studs that way. So you're still, that's why this is so significant, is you have to have that minimum R5 continuous over the studs regardless of what you use. So in actuality, that might end up lessening the amount of time that that's used because it's more expensive and it still isn't going to get you to meet this code. So people might be backing off on that in order to absorb it on the extra expense they're going to have for the exterior.
But I'm talking about like for an older house, a house that's, you know, older to insulate it.
Most houses that are older like that don't have any insulation. So obviously, no matter what you do, that's a vast improvement. But the
Okay.
foam is the most efficient because of the
Okay.
fact that not only does it spray on, so you don't have you know, just wrinkle gaps and things like that, but the fact that it actually expands, it sifts into all the little nooks and crannies that even blowing in might not, because it doesn't expand. This, because it expands, it seals every aspect of a potential air leak. So it is definitely. Now, keep in mind also, the other thing that's funny here is the fenestration rate, which is the insulation factor on the windows, for the most part, has very minimally increased over the last 10, 15 years. So no matter how much you seal your house up, your weak link is your windows. And, you know, nowadays houses are, you know, there's so many windows put in some of these houses that you're losing all your efficiency value through the windows, even if you got your walls insulated to this level.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Any more questions?
Any more?
All right, thank you very much.
Okay. Steve,
That's,
Dell?
that's a good
Dell?
question, Andy. How does that affect using shipping containers?
Well, I mean, the key here though is with a shipping container is you a lot of times you have a different method in the interior of that where you can spray foam the whole thing and then attach on the inside after the fact your drywall or whatever. So in this case here, from the energy efficiency standpoint, a shipping container might be a little bit more user friendly when it comes to meeting this new code. Now there's other factors of the shipping container that are going to offset that aren't user friendly, but that in that case there, that might actually be a little bit better application.
So we're asking for the Planning and Zoning Committee to recommend these changes to the county board.
Yes, Mr. Miller.
I move to.
Second by Mr. Swanson. Anybody have any discussion? Ms. Weber?
Thank you. The packet of materials, is this all part of the changes? You know, all these little words of
Yeah.
taking a.
That's our actual chapter 105 in the code. Part of it references that big stack of books.
Okay.
We went through the chapter 105 as well, and that is really more of the administrative side
I
of
see.
it. And one of the changes was Steve's title is Building and Zoning Division Manager. We don't have a Building and Zoning Division. We have a Building Division, so we're removing the word zoning from that. So there's some clerical errors or changes there. And there's a few where, as we went through, some things contradicted each other. One thing was the handling of fines, and a big one was the revocation of a contractor's registration. In two different places, it put who did that into. One was the Board of Examiners did it, one was the county board did it. We went with the county board one, so we made a few changes there to adjust that.
So all of your explanation is reflected in what we have on our screen? Okay.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Miller? No? Okay. Colton, Mr. Eckhoff.
Mr. Chairman, so 10567, so usually it's a mile, within a mile of a municipality. I see that got changed to a mile and a half. What's the
It's always
reasoning?
been a mile and a half
Oh, it's always been a mile and a half? Oh, okay, my bad.
since the
That's
big.
the notice of intent. That's first of all, in green was things that were added.
Okay.
Actually, that part of this ordinance was actually
Okay.
added back in May by the county board.
Okay.
When we lost the ability to regulate solar farms, we added in this notice of intent for large projects so that at least the adjoining property owners would still be notified.
Okay.
So that, there's no change to that part from what was actually approved back in May.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Everybody says it's okay to add $5,000 or $6,000 to the cost of a new house, huh?
Well,
We're gonna vote.
unfortunately, we
We're gonna
don't
do it. All
have
in favor, say aye.
we don't have a choice on that part.
So you have to, okay.
That's not part of what you're approving today. That's already.
Okay, we have a motion and a second, so we get all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, none. Okay, let's move on. Steve gets to, any more, you got anything else?
Nope.
Okay, good. Thank you for your time. Get on those books now. Yeah, gonna give
They
you a
actually
quiz.
do have to take tests on each one of those.
Yeah.
Yes. Steve, what are your certifications?
I have a B1, which is residential inspector. I have a stormwater certification. That's pretty much it at this point.
Yeah. One of our guys has a building or property maintenance certification. So there, each one of those books has a certification associated with it.
Who requires that certification?
Officially required, it's not. It's
I
not.
didn't think so, because
But-
there was a municipality who
Yes.
opted out of being certified.
But
for all their codes.
that also relates to your ISO rating. You get points for having certified inspectors. You lose points for not having certified inspectors.
So not having certified inspectors would potentially impact homeowners' insurance rates within that municipality.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Unless you can make up those points somewhere else. Yes.
Not likely.
But that is part of the matrix.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so that's out of the way for that. Okay, hazard mitigation, we have Andrea on.
No, this is just an update announcement. Our hazard mitigation plan has officially been approved by FEMA. The expiration date is September 5th, 2028. It's good for 5 years, so by that date, we will have to do this process again. With this approval letter means that anyone who has projects listed in that plan can start applying for money and grant funds for those projects. Now, each project has a list of different grant funds that it can draw from, so you would have to check with each of those grant funds to see when they're open for application.
Okay.
Some could be as early as this March.
Do you have anything else to add to that, Del?
No, it's just
kind of
Just
an update?
informational, giving everybody
Okay.
an update.
So we don't have to vote on that
So
one.
that
then.
is, that project is done
Okay.
from that aspect.
Next up, we have appointment of Luke Johnson to the Kankakee County Regional Planning Commission.
Yes, we have an application from Mr. Luke Johnson from Bourbonnais, who would like to be a new member on our Regional Planning Commission. And we would recommend that you approve that appointment.
Are we getting rid of somebody who's already there, or is this just
No, we
filling
have
in a hole?
we have two openings right now.
Okay.
Um,
Okay, need a motion
We do
and a
have the
second?
application in.
Mr. Eckhoff? Mr. Swan, oh, did you, Mr. Swanson, second? All in favor, say aye. Opposed, same sign. None? Okay, thank you. Next up, under old business, anything under old business? Anybody have anything? No? Okay. How about under new business? None of that? Okay, Mr. Wheeler.
Combination of both. Heard on the radio today that the law for the underground drainage part of wind and solar has been finally addressed and will go into effect January 1st, I believe.
I believe so.
So where does that get caught on our end? And what I'm getting at is we don't have any authority on citing of any of those anymore. But now they've given rights to the drainage district
Yeah.
to go not just above ground but underground drainage. And do they have to identify that as part of their engineering
Yes.
proposals? Okay.
So you get turned in when they apply? Then they'll-
Really, what they've done is given back authority to the drainage districts that new legislation back in January of last year took away from them.
Right.
So what they will have to provide us with is a drainage study of not only that site, but also surrounding properties, showing where all the drain tiles are and how the drainage flows. And that document will be part of the review process for the building permit. So we will take those documents and send it to our civil engineer reviewers.
So if there is nothing that we have on the laterals or the property owner has on laterals, they have to produce it to develop it on their own.
Somebody's
That's
gotta
not
come
a
up
part
with
of
it.
us.
No, we wouldn't be doing it.
Or the drainage district. It's not, yeah, you see where I'm going
Yeah,
with that.
one of the components is they must also provide that study to the drainage district. So if there are any issues, that developer and that drainage district will have to work those out.
Got it. We're not in the middle.
We're not in the middle, other than we can't approve the building permit till it is worked out.
Mhm.
Okay?
Okay, anyone else have anything? Jessica, you look like you were gonna ask something. No? Okay. Oh, Mr. Long. All in favor, or adjourn, right?
No, Mr.
Oh,
Long.
Mr. Long, okay.
I wanted to make a comment about the tiles. For example, like I personally own field tile in my fields. Some of those are 100 years old. We don't always have a map of, we know they exist because we have to fix them when they break, but we don't always know exactly where they're at. And some of those tiles are not quote unquote in a drainage district. So just to put it in perspective for people who may not be familiar with that, there are drainage districts in many areas of this county, and you may belong to that, but that doesn't mean you don't have tile where they're going to position solar panels and wind farms, etc. So I'm not exactly sure how that's going to work. I assume that the people who are signing the contracts that own the property will be in charge of identifying that, but certainly an important issue that's going to come up.
Well, regardless of the existence of a drainage district, they still must do the study. And there are people out there that have equipment that can locate those tiles. There's at least one, I forget the name.
Hale.
Is that
Hale.
Hale?
Out of,
Yeah.
Ashland.
They can do that. So they're probably going to be very, very busy people because there's not too many out there that can do it. But they will still have to provide that study. And like I said, our civil engineers will review that study, even if there is no drainage district. And we have to keep in mind too that is going on. These are on private property, so the person signing the contract to have this solar farm there is the one who owns those tiles as well. So I would imagine their contracts should address that.
Yes.
Okay.
I had one quick one under new business. Dell, these companies are coming out with these batteries for these solar farms. Are you making them come in and get permits and get approvals to put those batteries on the solar farm sites? Because they're having cows all over the country about it right now. I didn't know if you're prepared for anything like that, because it's coming now.
Well, we're prepared for it based on the state statute that says they can do that. So, it would be part of their building permit process.
Okay, so there would be, even to do that, they'd have to make sure there's no tile underneath where they're doing that too?
Yes.
Okay.
Part of the.
Yeah, start over, okay, just wanted to double check.
I haven't had any existing farms come back yet wanting to add that. Some of the newer ones that haven't been built yet do have that as part of their design, which would fall under the rest of the building review.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Okay.
Are those on slabs? You just don't stick them in the mud.
No. There's like a slab foundation for them, from what I've seen. I don't think have we had one actually come in with the design yet? No.
I don't see how that would improve.
I know some of them have improved it. No, it's not going into the ground. It's sitting on top of the ground.
Well, it might go into the ground depending on the size of this unit.
No, they put footings on there if they're heavy.
Some of them could have footings depending on, and that's where we rely back on engineers designing it. It's gonna design based on the load factor, so, you know, depending on how high they're stacking these batteries, whatever, it could involve more than a slab. It could involve what we call a monocore, which is thickened around the outside. It could get to a point where they might have to be below frost line in order to make sure that it doesn't shift and crack. I haven't seen the design on one yet, even though there's some that are in the process of that will submit that, and we haven't seen the
Yeah, the way that works is they design it, they provide us the plans, we send the plans to our engineers who review that to make sure it's appropriate.
Yeah. Okay. Jessica, Ms. Andrade.
Do you guys have a list of contractors that work best that we can contact?
There's a list of we have a list of registered contractors, and I believe that is even broken down by discipline, isn't it, Steve? Yes. So we could provide you with that, but as far as works best, no, we don't rate them.
But the ones that basically would go by the codes that are being updated and everything?
Well, they all must go by those codes.
Contractors don't.
If not, we usually catch them.
Our contractor registration is basically to make sure that they are covered with insurance. Our contractor registration is designed to make sure that they have proper insurances and things like that. We don't regulate quality. So as long as they provide us proof of liability and workman's comp insurance and they have a bond, then we issue them that contractor registration. Now in the event that they don't have that, or that they've been caught in some violations where they had it and got rid of it or whatever, then we can revocate or suspend them because of that. But from a standpoint of work quality, you know, we don't regulate that. Even in our inspections, you know, we have to regulate based on the code. So they might not be doing a great job of putting miters together or something, but that's not code related. We're only looking at code. So we have no, what we do with that contractor registration has nothing to do with quality of work, I guess.
It's way more.
Mr. Wheeler.
Could you let the committee know what jurisdiction that applies to that we have authority over, and if we have any agreements with any other jurisdiction?
Okay. Yeah, we can't hear you, Andy.
Well, if you could let the committee know what jurisdiction that applies to, and if there are any municipalities who have, I want to say legislated that they're using either our policy, our codes, or anything like that. Because I think there might be a misconception that we do this within the municipalities.
Well, kind of two different questions there, but yes. The codes that you're recommending adoption today only apply to unincorporated Kankakee County. Each municipality has their own codes, or not. That's their prerogative. As far as contractor registration, that also applies to projects in unincorporated Kankakee County, but a few municipalities have adopted our registration program. Bourbonnais is one of them.
Bourbonnais, Bradley, most of the smaller municipalities, Herscher, Moments, Limestone, they all use ours. Some that don't are the city of Kankakee. Manteno has their own. Other than those two, I think that for the most part, the rest of the county, even the municipalities, use our contractor registration.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, anyone else? Entertain a motion to adjourn. Okay, Whoa, Ms. Andrade and Mr. Swanson. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Everybody, thank you. If I don't see you before